Welcome to Season 4 of AIHA's podcast series, The Healthy Workplaces Show, where we explore timely and informative topics about occupational and environmental health and safety to help you improve your workplace. I'm your host, Alejandro Castillo. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with award-winning industrial hygienist, Carter Ficklen. Carter is a graduate of Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. He works as a program manager for Mission Technology JV, where he manages contracts to provide safety, industrial hygiene, risk management, quality assurance, and construction management consulting services for NASA. In 2009, Carter earned AIHA's Kuznets Award, which recognizes industrial hygienists under 40 who provided the highest standards of health and safety protection for employees while showing promise of leadership in the profession. In 2021, Carter received AIHA's Distinguished Service Award for contributing to the advancement of industrial hygiene. Many of you who have studied or are studying for the AIHA exam will recognize Carter as the author and editor of one of AIHA's best-selling publications. In fact, the 2024 bestseller, The Industrial Hygiene Reference and Study Guide, 4th edition. Today we're here to talk about Carter's career, his advice to the future generations of OEHS professionals, and why our listeners should attend AIHA Connect 2025. Carter, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Alejandro. Appreciate you having me today. Excited to kick off this season of the podcast.
Carter, you have an impressive career in OEHS. What inspired you to enter this field?
So my story is a little different than most. Most people in this profession sort of fall into it or come across it. Most people when they're in middle school don't know what industrial hygiene is. I was a little different. So when I was a kid, my dad's career was radiation safety or health physics. And then he managed a group where there were some industrial hygienists. So I have memories of when he picked me up from school, occasionally going into the lab area where his industrial hygienists work and calibrating instruments. And back in the old days, you graduated cylinder and a stopwatch to calibrate sampling pumps. Mm-hmm. So, I knew what it was and, probably through high school. So I grew at my early teen years, I got really, really into surfing. It was a passion of mine. And I guess I was 16, wasn't quite 17 yet. And here on the coast, on the East Coast, a lot of the better waves are by inlets where they're jetties. And they dredge these inlets so boats can safely go in and out. And they pump the dredge spoiler, the sand, over, and it creates sandbars. And one day I was surfing, and there was all this churned up nasty water, but the waves were really, really good. Of course. And I did notice a little petroleum smell, but when you're young and the waves are good and it's not real crowded, you surf for a couple hours. That evening, I did feel a little strange, because it was springtime, so I was wearing a full wetsuit. And the next morning, I woke up and had some sort of rash or welts, and showed my dad and told him what had happened. And he goes, "Oh, that's probably some sort of contact dermatitis." And it was significant. So I went to the doctor, and it turned out that the doctor had worked previously in his early practice as an occupational health physician. So he said, "Oh, yeah, it's definitely potentially some metals, contact your skin, and then with the wetsuit sort of rubbing them in." So it's kind of very interesting that how something in the environment could affect someone's health, and I got some hydrocortisone cream and I think some prescription, and it went away in a few days, but definitely was trying to figure out what to study, and definitely want to stay by the coast, to be by the beach. So Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia is about 30 minutes from Virginia Beach, and then about an hour and a half from North Carolina's Outer Banks. So went to college there, majored in environmental health, and had a concentration in industrial hygiene. So became active in our local section as a student member would go, and sort of networked with some of the older IHs in the area. So got started being involved in AIHA very young.
That's very unique. I feel like every person I've talked to or interviewed, it's always such a niche market that they discover in the future. So
yeah, there are a few folks over the years I've come across that are like the second, and even now here there's a few third generation, but it's pretty rare. I'd say less than 5% of the folks that you talk to are have a parent who did it. So yeah.
Yeah. Is there a defining moment in your career that shaped your perspective as an IH?
Wow. So I've been at this a minute. So in the past 25 years. So, one thing thinking back one of the things where I put a lot of work in, I was a good student, but I was never a great student. I sort of got by reading the bold-faced words and chapter summaries, and, never sort of went all in on studying. But one of the things that's a real key part in an industrial hygienist career is achieving certification or the CIH exam. So when I got in the 5 years of experience and became eligible to sit for the exam, for about a 6-month period, pretty much all I did was dedicate myself to studying. I finished work in the afternoon and then studied literally every night with long study sessions on weekends. And it was very interesting because, in university, when you have you'll, even if it's a midterm, there's kind of a capstone point in your study, and you kind of know where you are. Where studying for something that's as broad, or the abyss of the CIH exam, was just so many subjects. You never know when it's good enough. You just kind of, but I went all in, and I'll always remember the excitement of getting, because you passed back in those days. Now you hit a button on the computer, but it was an in-person test, and you didn't get the results for 6 weeks, and you knew you passed before opening the envelope because you had 3 letters, either did or didn't have 3 letters after your name. So I have a really neat memory of finding out a passing, calling my dad. That was a real special moment, and I get a little choked up when I think about it, because it definitely is the first time that I went all in on something, and, you really got to see the hard work pay off. And from that point forward, I sort of realized in that studying process, it was very humbling how much information was out there and how broad the field is. And I developed a passion for that to give back. And because the process, when I went through it, it was very lonely. Social media didn't exist then. Their smartphones were a long way away. So it was a very isolating experience in those months of studying. And I wouldn't change it, but it was, I think there's a better pathway. And I think it's really neat to see how the younger generation can sort of get linked together through different social networking, through AIHA or different pieces like that. So,
transitioning a little bit to your career, have you faced any significant challenges along your career path, and how'd you overcome them?
Let's see. So, I was a practicing hygienist for a number of years. I got certified, and then I guess a few years after that, I had an opportunity to sort of leapfrog a few levels and take a leadership role where I wasn't just doing industrial hygiene. I was doing safety, system safety, quality management, risk management, a number of services for the company that I work for, a private company called Mainthea Technologies. And we support NASA's oldest research center, NASA Langley, as well as Goddard Space Flight Center, helping people stay healthy and safe at work. And jumping into that role right away was a little tough, because it wasn't just about sampling protocols. It was about learning about human resources, learning a lot about accounting, learning a lot about different procurement regulations and how contracts work. And I think it was always great to have people to ask or to reach out to for help with those things. But yeah, I think that was a big challenge when it was, and I think that happens with a lot of people as they get successful earlier in their hygiene career. Hygiene is sort of a niche where it is broad within itself, but there's a whole spectrum of EHS and environment, health, and safety.
Absolutely.
And in many cases, the organizations will do quality or security as a part of that, that effort, whether it's in private or government.
Before you became a best-selling author in the OEHS field, what motivated you to write about IH?
So interesting story is that when I was studying for the exam back in 2002, the very first edition of the Industrial Hygiene Reference and Study Guide came out, and it was thin. And after carrying around like big clunky, like the big giant white book, affectionately referred to as the white elephant, these giant books and references, it was probably midway through my study, like right around this time, because I sat for the exam in June of 2002, and getting this one tight little package that you could kind of go through and have a lot of information, kind of like the Cliff Notes. And I noticed there was a guy, Alan Flieger and Dean Lilliquist, that wrote it, and it's real helpful for me. And then fast forward a few years later, I was at the AIHA conference in Atlanta and was in a meeting, and I guess I was a local section president and a local sections council meeting, and I see a guy's name badge and it said Alan Flieger. I'm like, hey, are you the guy that wrote the book? And it was very interesting because at least I had the perception that was wrong, that people that wrote books were much older or later in their careers, and maybe didn't but didn't look like Alan, because Alan was just a younger, fun guy. And we hit it off and became active on a number of AIHA projects. And then he kind of mentioned it, about doing an update, because there have been a couple minor updates, and I believe it was in 2018 at the conference in Philadelphia. He said, "Hey, let's go out to lunch. I want to take you out to lunch. I want to talk to you about something." And he said, "Hey, I want to turn this over to somebody who's very aware of what's going on with the CIH exam process." Because starting in 2006, I organized a roundtable at the conference each year where called Perspectives on Preparation for the CIH exam, where we would try to get usually 5 or 6 speakers from a variety of backgrounds. So really for diverse speakers to try to talk about their experience, what worked for them, what didn't. We'd also get people because a lot of times people don't pass the first try on the CIH exam. So there are some people that are very open and willing to talk about how, that process of how you pick the pieces up, because it's pretty common to put in a lot of effort and studying. And then if you don't pass, it's obviously very frustrating. So we just how to do that. So that session ran, I believe, up until 2019, and then COVID sort of changed things in the 2020 and 2021. But Alan said, "Hey, I'd really like you to do the book," and he'd maybe undersold how much work it was going to be, but I agreed, and he twisted my arm with a few beers later that night, and and then started working with AIHA staff, and I guess ended up being about a year process. So.
What has been your approach to authoring and editing the latest edition?
Some things on exam change, some don't. So, ABIH, which is BGC, I'll refer to it as ABIH a bunch because that's what it was when. But they do a role delineation, task analysis. So they try to evolve the exam to look like, hey, what is industrial hygiene practice? Because every 5 to 10 years, there are a lot of changes in technology, changes in industry, changes in the hazards that workers are exposed to. So just being cognizant of that, where things had evolved there. I had a pretty good pulse on how how the exam and how it had changed, how the formula sheets changed. And also, the exam, typically they'll be your core base topics, ventilation, toxicology, but then there are new pieces, the way we do exposure assessment now, and some of the modern techniques that we use that weren't around 20 years ago when I was sitting for the exam. So just tried to go through and just kind of assess, what chapters were there. Did some need to be changed or significantly, a number needed a lot of revision because there had been a ton of changes. And then one of the things, the areas where I didn't feel I was at a high level of confidence to go through it, I'd reach out for help. For example, the non-ionizing and ionizing radiation chapters, a colleague of mine he's passed away now, but Kim Merritt did a great job of going through that and really modernizing that for, hey, what does an industrial hygienist need to know about lasers and about ionizing radiation? And just going through each area, it sort of worked out that I guess it ended up towards the end in the springtime, because I remember it was around this time that we were really pushing, but my goal was to turn out a chapter a week. That some of those weeks there was a little bit of midnight oil, especially when it was time to go to press. So I think Alan definitely sort of, I wouldn't say undersold, but it was a lot more work than I had anticipated. And it kind of, when I was doing it with having references spread across my kitchen table, kind of reminded me of studying, because it was a lot of the same references I had used and information, and even some of the old notepads that I had was studying, some of those pieces that I still had around were used. So it was kind of a neat process. And just like the exam, when I hit send on the final chapter, when I believe it was, I think, the foreword that I wrote, when I hit send on that, it was just a big feeling of relief, So
I'm sure,
it was a big project, but it was definitely a labor of love.
I can imagine just like notes everywhere around your desk, just so much information to convey, just a lot to prepare.
And the other thing that helped too was, because I work with a group of hygienists here, and a lot of times after a chapter or a certain portion of a chapter, I would, print some out and just drop it on their desk and say, hey, give this a calibration check for me, check the pulse on this. What's the tone? Because you're trying to keep it at that was one of the things with this book, is not getting too far into the weeds, which is difficult because it's gotten a little thicker over the years. I guess I brought a show and tell copy here, but it still fits in your hand and it's bound. But I'd say it's probably twice the size or so of the first edition. So there is more content there, and we were able to use some more modern graphics. So it was great to work with AIHA staff to modernize the graphic appearance of it. So.
You touched about this a bit earlier, but how can a professional get involved in authoring or editing for AIHA?
Don't do it. I'm kidding. No, no. AIHA has a publications committee. This project was kind of worked outside of that because of the timetable we were on. Sometimes publications with groups, you get a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and this one was so diverse because it's little tiny pieces of a number of subjects that it was kind of, I had sort of a core group of folks, that help with chapters. Megan Canwright wrote the biological hazards, really help with that to modernize that because hygienist's role in biological hazards drastically increased. Jennifer Sawmell was a huge help with the exposure assessment piece there. So I think that for someone who wants to write a book would be to get on one of AIHA's technical committees in the area that you have expertise, to reach out to that. I think a lot of people with books, you can always use help. People would always love to have a second set of eyes, and that's the piece to get in there. And then also when doing it is just making sure that you have time in your professional and personal life to do that. I had a lot going on. The spring of 2019 was a very busy time. So, it felt big relief when I left the conference and held the book in my hand and knew that I didn't have to write any chapters for a long time. So,
as you know, the field of OEHS is constantly evolving. What skills do you think will be the most valuable for the next generation?
So I think that it definitely has evolved. I know that when I was early, in university and then early in my career, there was a huge focus on technical aspects and understanding all the technical pieces, because a lot of what we do is driven by different regulatory requirements, whether those are internal to companies, consensus standards, or governmental regulations, regardless of where the workplace, because it is a global, we're a global environment now, which has changed. But I think some of the pieces is communication, is understanding, a lot of what we do is, it's not exactly common sense to a lot of people. So being able to clearly and concisely communicate, whether it's in verbal communication or in written communication. I think it's sometimes harder to write a really tight, concise email than a long one. So I think is being able, and because people are very distracted, and a lot of times folks want to know, what do I have to do here? What do we have to do to keep the workers healthy and safe? And can you do that in 150 words or less? What do we got to do and how do we have to do it? So I think being concise, because a lot of our work is very detailed and it's science driven. So understanding a lot of times we don't have all the data points that we may have had years ago because the types of processes we use are evolving in industry. Where it used to be there might be a manufacturing line that would just consistently roll the same thing, the same workers, and workers would be in the same role like for an entire working career. But I think it's just being nimble and also just understanding how quickly information flows now. When I first started in the field, the internet was there, but it wasn't widely used. So as a hygienist or a safety professional, just showing up and knowing what the regulation was sort of puts you on top, because it was difficult. I guess you could probably go to OSHA's website or a website and look things up, but not like it is now where, everybody in their fingertips basically can Google a standard and know it. So everybody's an expert. But yeah, I think just understanding and early on is how to communicate, is being technically solid, but understanding how to communicate with folks. And then also just get along with people. A lot of times we are interacting with folks or having a good bedside manner when you're interacting with, whether it's management, because one of the cool things about this type of work is you interact with all levels of an organization, from a temporary laborer to, say, a president or CEO or center director, and that can all happen within one day. So that is one of the things that does make this an exciting profession.
Speaking about communication, let's talk more about networking. Why is networking so important in this profession? And for students and early career professionals, what resources would you recommend to them?
Yeah, I think a network is great to have because if you have a network, there's always somebody you can always get that phone a friend. If you have a question or a piece, something that might take you a long time to research or understand, you might be able to reach out to somebody and run the question by them. Or if you have a situation, just to run it past. Because sometimes when I remember being my very first job out of college when I started, I was working for a consulting firm and I was on the road all the time, and it was very isolating. Of the type of work we were doing, and I didn't have much of a network then. So as I grew in my career and built a network with other hygienists in the U.S. at first and now around the world. I think it's a really neat way to just learn more and understand. And also, like the work we do can be frustrating. It's not it can be tough sometimes. So it's nice to just have somebody that gets it, because significant others may not really want to hear about some of the things we do, because sometimes I guess the term's geek speak of it. So it's nice to
Yeah.
have to kind of be able to vent with your people a little bit, just to have folks to talk to. Because I think frustration, this type of work, it's rewarding, but it can be frustrating. And I think that's something that's a real thing. And having a network is a real key thing there. And also networking really helps from a technical perspective. AIHA has resources like Catalyst. There are groups on LinkedIn that you can become a part of, and just to learn things about what's going on. Sometimes you learn more by reading these questions, or and it kind of, well, it might, even if you're not dealing with that exposure, that issue, it might trigger something where you just remember it down the road. It's a great way. And then also that's a great way for folks that are looking to study the exam, is those type of things, because the things that a lot of times appear on exams are the things that people are struggling with, or the exposures that are
Hmm.
going on there. So I think staying current with what's going on, because media is a little different now. I know we still get the center, the AIHA members still get the center just in the mail each month. So one of the only print publications I still get. But it is neat to have that, because that used to be a huge piece there. But I think it's finding a network that works for you. And as well as I mentioned before, AIHA local sections are a great way. It's a real low cost, entry point in, and a lot of the sections are very excited to welcome in young people and help them grow their careers.
So I will be attending AIHA Connect this year. Why do you think it's a good idea for others to attend AIHA Connect?
Yeah, it's neat because it's there's so many people there. There's a lot of great technical information to get. The different sessions on areas that may impact your some challenges you're going through, or some areas that your employer is looking to understand better, to protect workers. There are also a lot of really neat opportunities to network and meet people in the profession. I've been very fortunate to meet friends from all over the world. I went to the conference for the first time in 1996 when it was in Washington, D.C. as a student. And the resources for students back in those days were a little different. There wasn't a whole lot going on there. So I didn't really talk to a whole lot of people. Where now there are a lot of really exciting opportunities that for students to interact and, break the ice. For some, it'll be their first time attending in some of the pieces. And, an interesting thing with me is I wasn't much of I ran casually, but I guess back in the conference in 2004 was the first time that I ran a timed race for the AIHA, the Foundation Fun Run each year. And little did I know that I'd end up getting really, really into running, and 25 marathons and probably 30 ultra marathons later. So it is neat to just, I've met many great running friends just by meeting them at the run over the years. It's a neat way to get up early in the morning. And, I think it's a great to see things in person. And then also is a lot of our shopping for instruments, or the equipment we use, is done online, where it used to be that a sales rep used to go by and then they'd open up their trunk with all these things. But that doesn't happen nearly as much as it used to. But it is great to go and talk to the different vendors there. Each year, I always find there's something new, or something a better, a new technology that we can utilize to do things a little better. So I think just a really cool opportunity to get their network and just learn a lot of things. And it's pretty cool over the years, after going 20 sometimes. It's always pretty much in a different city, so it's you get to
Hmm.
experience a different city. So it is a lot of fun to do that, and just reconnect with friends that you'll make over the years.
I have to ask, do you have a favorite Connect? What year was it?
Ooh, gosh, this is tough. Yeah, there's each year kind of has its own little I think 2005, so I'm an avid surfer. So 2005 it was in Anaheim, which is like 30 minutes from Newport Beach. So got a lot of surfing in that week. And then the very first conference that I went to as a professional is when I took the exam back in 2002, was in San Diego. So again, lots of surfing there. But each city, it has its own flavor. I'm excited. I guess next year is going to be in New Orleans, so I think that'll be a lot of fun
Hmm.
to go on Bourbon Street. But yeah, I think each city has its own. But for me, anytime it's at the coast, and also being in the mountains, running. I remember Salt Lake had really great trails just right outside of the convention center. And one of the creek trails that went up with just beautiful views of the city, right outside of the convention center. So it was a lot of fun to experience the outdoors as well as the conference.
Yeah, I'm very excited about Kansas City this year. I've never been, and I want to experience the culture, the food.
Yeah,
It's a, as a
barbecue.
first time attendee, I'm very excited. What advice would you give to a first time attendee who wants to make the most out of it?
I guess one of the things I've noticed that they do on the Sunday evening, I believe, is they do like a first timer, like an orientation thing to learn a little
Yeah.
bit about it. I think for a younger professional, it's trying to, there's some nice cocktail hours and parties that different vendors have. So I
Hmm.
think orientation, is that usually as a younger professional, if you go up to a booth and especially if your employer does business, you can get those where it's just a great opportunity to meet some people. A lot of them have some good food and good beverages, and it's just a fun time. So there are a lot of fun opportunities like that. But I think that for a first time attendee, I know when they started doing that, I thought it was a really great idea to give folks who may not have been, and then also reaching out to ahead of time if you have colleague, folks that you went to school with or in your same industry, looking up in your same company, because some large companies you may not know everybody that's going, is to try to look up and say, hey, is there somebody from my company attending that I haven't met before. So yeah, I think doing a little homework ahead of time to plan out, and then also is looking, because when you get there and it's busy, I remember it used to be there was a hard copy. I think everything's app driven now.
Yeah.
So if going in ahead of time and going through the app and marking sessions, because sometimes if you don't have things planned out, it can seem a little bit overwhelming. It's kind of getting a plan of what sessions you want to go to and the other activities that are going on.
Everyone who's listening, who's a first time attendee, do your homework and you'll be fine.
Yeah, that's always as a hygienist, anticipate, recognize, evaluate, control, right? So
There we go. And I do want to mention to everybody who attends Connect 2025 that we'll have a special promotion. It'll be 25% off the Industrial Hygiene Reference and Study Guide 4th edition book. You're not going to want to miss this promotion. As you know, Carter has worked really hard on this, so you definitely want to see his hard work because it's a lot of good information. Carter, as we approach the end of this episode, is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
yeah, I think finding this profession is it's neat. Because it is sort of a niche, and it's you get that look when you tell people you're an industrial hygienist, they kind of glaze over, and then occasionally ask, do you clean buildings, do you clean teeth, and and then everybody's kind of got their elevator speech. My lightest one is I keep people I do my best to keep people healthy and safe at work, and then sometimes if they glaze over that one, I'll go be like, I do OSHA stuff, and they go, oh, OSHA. But I think it's everybody has a story about how they got into this profession. It's not one that most, that it's not like getting a degree in mechanical engineering. And I think it's important to, as you get into the workplace, is finding a place to work where you're passionate about it, you're excited to go to work. And just understanding that a lot of what we do is we enable technology, because a lot of the substances that we use are very toxic and hazardous, but pretty much any substance can be worked with safely with the appropriate planning and controls ahead of time. So I think it's exciting for all the technology that can be used. It's going to be interesting to see how AI and all that, that information can be processed so quickly, and we can get so many data points with different sensors. And then, even in the ergonomics realm, there's some really exciting technology, because that musculoskeletal disorders are a huge impact to the workforce and quality of life of people, is some of the new AI-based tools that sort of, kind of observe the worker working and can make recommendations automatically. So some really exciting software platforms out there that can do that, and really if they're cumulative trauma type exposures for people, because ergonomics is a definite quality of life issue for people. A lot of what we do might be chemical exposures where the endpoint would be 30
Hmm.
years down the road, but things where people are impacted right away and are in pain and can't do the things they enjoy are very difficult. So I think that a piece too is looking at what can we do to keep people healthy and safe right in front of us, as well as the long-term exposures, because a lot of the things that we do do fall into that long-term exposure category. And I think also in your career is seeking opportunities to take leadership courses or read leadership books, or just try to expand, because everybody sort of has their own style. And I think that as a hygienist, you're going and talking to people kind of on your own and in person, and then writing reports or different pieces like that, is understanding that everybody in the profession is a leader. And having that confidence and trying to build on those skills is going to take you a long way, regardless of if you're the boss or anything like that. But just is understanding that the importance of leadership and how that and effective communication is the real cornerstone to making sure that folks go home healthy and safe at the end of the day.
Okay, Carter, that wraps up today's episode of the AIHA Healthier Workplaces Show. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insight.
Thanks a bunch, Alejandro, and look forward to seeing you in Kansas City in about a month and 2 months, I guess. Yeah, 2 months away. So
pretty much, yeah.
It'll be here before we know it. So
absolutely. To learn more, visit the AIHA website and follow us on social media. Thank you for tuning in, and as always, remember that healthier workplaces means a healthier world. Until next time.